The SEC is a basketball conference. That's a fact. Bank on it. Caleb, back me up.
The SEC is absolutely a basketball conference, more than football. They have nobody else. They have one team in the Final Four in football, and that team wasn't even in the SEC last year. Meanwhile, in basketball, just going every single team at some point this year in the SEC has received votes in the top 25. The worst team right now is South Carolina at 10-5. That's their record. The SEC rankings. Tennessee and Auburn are 1 and 2. That's going to change after Tennessee lost this past weekend. But the top 10 also includes Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida, and Texas A&M. So 6 of the top 10 teams are in the SEC. 7 of the top 15 when you add Mississippi State. And 8 of the top 25 once you add Ole Miss. Meanwhile, Arkansas is receiving a vote. Georgia is receiving votes. Missouri is receiving votes. And Vanderbilt's receiving votes. So 12 teams are receiving votes in the top 25 in the SEC. And right now it's projected that 13 of the 16 will make the NCAA tournament.
That's obscene. And
absolutely obscene.
And on the football side of it, too, it was, you have Texas that's out there, but it really doesn't even feel like an SEC school, to be honest with you. So, Georgia did not exactly carry the banner, but again, they're asked to play an extra game. And I don't know how the money shakes out. I know they make a boatload of money for the SEC championship game, but do they make comparable money in the college football playoff? How is that money dispersed? I mean, if you have 2 teams, do you get more money? If you have 1 team, do you get more money as opposed to 0 teams? Or do you know how that's dispersed, Caleb?
I have no idea. I think you get more money based on the number of teams you get in the NCAA tournament, and it's like $2 million, and then you get like $1 million for every team that advances, goes to the conference, for every like NCAA tournament win. I guess. Does that make sense? Every NCAA tournament.
Oh, you talking about hoops? Sorry.
Yeah, in college basketball. Yeah, every NCAA tournament game that is played in, a certain amount of revenue is generated for the conference. It's like a minimum of like 1 million or 2 million or something like that.
Okay, now I have the college football playoff revenue distribution because let's be honest, nothing happens until the money meets the road, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Each of the 10 conferences receive a base amount. For conferences that have contracts for the champions to participate in the Orange, Rose, or Sugar Bowls, the base combined with a full academic performance pool was approximately $79.41 million for each conference. Okay, so that tells me, all right, each conference will receive $300,000 for each of its schools when the school's football team meets the APR, which they all are now because they just make it up. A conference will receive $4 million for each team that makes the college football playoff. A conference then will receive $6 million for each team that advances to the playoff semifinal. Each conference whose team participates in the college football playoff will receive $3 million to cover expenses for each round. Okay, so you're talking about basically if you make it to the semifinal, you're bringing home $10 million to the conference. Now, let's take a look at this. Is that significant in terms of money? Caleb, it would be significant if it fell in our laps, but when we talk about hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're talking about $10 million, that's not even $1 million per team by the time you spread it out.
No, it's not.
Okay, even if 2 teams make it, it's like $1.2 million if I can do the math in my head. That's goofy. That needs to be adjusted. Okay. Does that seem low to you?
It does. I think I have a theory, though, on why there's such a gap and why it's so much better in basketball right now. And I want to know your thoughts on this.
Oh, okay. You changing it up for me? Okay.
Sorry. But
that's all right.
Do you think the SEC football programs put too much pressure on themselves to find like the perfect coach, and the SEC basketball programs are more willing to settle on good coaches?
That is a great point. It's not that they're more willing to settle. It's that they're more willing to be aggressive because they know that football is ultimately going to determine what they do. So like when Mike Hamilton goes to hire Bruce Pearl, who, for those that don't know, recorded a prospect and saying that he got some sort of extra benefit from, I believe, Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a no-no. Even though he was in the right, Bruce was, you just don't do that. I mean, it's just like I said earlier. I don't rip other media members unless they rip us, and Caleb got ripped earlier. So I just don't think you do that. And so he was tainted goods, even though he probably shouldn't have been. So, but Mike Hamilton can go hire him, and if he doesn't like him, get rid of him. And ultimately, people are going to say, well, at least football recruiting is going well.
Exactly. In football, they're looking for reasons to not hire a coach, and they have the checklist, right? You got to check all these boxes. In basketball, it's let's just go get this coach. If it don't work out, I'll get a new one in 3 years and call it a day. It's not a big deal. And I think there's been more. I think the pool of coaches that they're willing to hire in basketball is much larger. I mean, like, let's take Rick Barnes at Tennessee. You know, Donnie Tyndall, Dave Hart had to fire him after a year because of a recruiting scandal. Okay, fired him after a year. What does he do? He goes and gets Rick Barnes, a 60-year-old coach who was just fired by his previous job. Dave Hart's like, I don't care. He can win. He'll get us to the NCAA tournament. That's all that matters. And he goes after him. I think the lack of pressure to hire the right coaches in basketball has resulted in better coaches being hired in basketball in the SEC. I think, Dave, I don't know if you agree, but I think you would take the collection of SEC basketball coaches over the collection of SEC football coaches every day of the week.
Okay. Without Nick Saban, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, he's the trump card. Do you ever play Rook, the bird?
I have not, but
yeah, it's like spades. It's like white people spades.
Okay. But like, look, I mean, okay, Auburn. You just brought up Bruce Pearl. Auburn was able to go and take a shot to hire Bruce Pearl after his show calls was up. They didn't care. It's basketball. Now, granted, they went for Hugh Freeze too. One has worked out a hell of a lot better than the other for them. Okay. But you know, Chris Jans at Mississippi State, Nate Oates at Alabama. Ole Miss has gone for Chris Beard, the Texas coach who was fired because of some domestic incident. Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, who was at Marquette. Todd Golden at Florida. I mean, like, these coaches, and by the way, not all of them are national championship coaches, but I think what the SEC, what SEC basketball schools accept, Dave, is okay, you're Tennessee in football. I tell you, this coach is going to have you maybe in the college football playoff every few years, but he's not a national championship coach. You're nixing him, right? If I tell you he can't win a national title.
Yes. If you're one of the about 25 schools in the SEC and you could tell me I'm Nostradamus and he is not going to win a championship, then there are about 25 schools that you're instantly fired.
Yeah, exactly. College basketball, if I tell you this coach will have you in the NCAA tournament every year, but he's not going to win a championship, most of the schools are going to be like, we'll take that outside of Kentucky, won't they?
I think it's called the Rick Barnes rule.
Yeah, exactly. It is the Rick Barnes rule. That's a great point. I mean, Arkansas with John Calipari. John Calipari's got one national title to his resume and hasn't even been out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament in 7 years. So Arkansas, like, who cares? He's going to get us NBA prospects and have us in the tournament. That's why it's so deep. The SEC's will is more willing to hire certain coaches in basketball that they won't hire in football.
Well, I can't completely disagree with you there, Caleb. As a matter of fact, I do agree. Here's the other thing too. The one school that you have that could probably hire just about anybody they want has been incredibly aggressive with Rick Pitino. Let's take this a step further. And then they go out and get John Calipari, who obviously had some issues coming in. But let's look at some of the other guys. How about Billy Donovan? There was no guarantee that Billy Donovan was going to win 2 championships. He was kind of like a little Pitino clone. And, you know, he was hired. It was nothing special. LSU hired Will Wade because they knew he was going to cheat. And they needed somebody to cheat, and that's just a fact.
Yep.
You can't win at LSU in basketball without cheating. That's why I know a lot of people close to Will Wade they were very disappointed that he took that job because it's common knowledge you have to cheat at LSU in basketball. So I'm trying to think of, Eddie Fogler held on to a job way too long. I mean, I guess we could go on and on and on. You have more freedom. You have more rope to hang yourself, I guess. If you're a basketball coach as a football coach. So the SEC is a basketball conference,